Hello.
Excellent. We're streaming live at the moment. I started just a minute early at the same time I was calling yourself. How is the quality of my sound?
Excellent.
Excellent, because you're registering on the online broadcasting software. Let's bring the other individuals online. Okay, the other two individuals, and then I can give everybody kind of the lowdown on what's going on with myself. And I pray that things are good with you.
I'm fine, yeah.
Excellent. Excellent. Everybody be patient with me. I'm going to explain, of course, the usual developments. There's always something. And here we are. We're calling the other two individuals, Brendan Zoget and Aristides. And let's see who responds or who is able to respond. Oh, let me stretch here. And then we'll go to see if the live link is live streaming. Oh my god. And Aristides has joined us. So Aristides, give me a second here to look at the online broadcasting software. Say hello.
Hello.
Okay, you're registering, and you sound so excited. So
It does sound excited.
Always.
Yes, good. And okay, so let's go over to the studio and see if we're live streaming. We seem to be connected. It says we have an excellent connection. Okay, and we've got 7 concurrent viewers already. Do me a favor, dear Aristides, and tell them about upvotes. What you do for upvotes, what they can do for upvotes.
Okay, I will do that because I'm about to do that right now.
Yeah.
I am,
Excellent.
I'm always signed into YouTube, but if you are not, or you don't have an account, yeah, you can make one. I think it's pretty simple. And you wait, I gotta find the live here. Where are we at? Well, you can, once you have your main YouTube account, you can upvote with that, and you can also create they're like auxiliary sub channels or sub identities to your account under the settings menu in the upper right under switch account, and you can then create other channels that you could use for multiple purposes. I don't know what people use them for, but here you will use them to provide more upvotes.
Excellent. Thank you. And what other people use those other channels for is they use them to upvote their own videos. That's basically what most people seem to do with them. I do. Just so people understand, I do not know that from personal experience because I do not have other channels. And someday someone will have to help me, establish a few more of them so I can do that. But I know for a fact that the enemy does that. And that's how they multiply upvotes for the stupid comments. I'm sorry. Were you saying something, Peter? I'm so sorry.
No, but you're picking up my telepathic thoughts. I will maybe address the whole impetus of people needing and desiring attention.
Yes, thank you. That sounds good. And so Aristides, bless you. As always, your beautiful voice helps lend credence and weight to what you're saying. And I will now explain to everyone before I turn everything over to dear Peter my general situation. Eric Cradle says, everyone's loud and clear. Bless you, Eric Cradle. Thank you so much. And let me actually enter that for him since we have a moment's time. And let me even personalize that. Good. Okay. With all that being said, I want... Oh, yeah. Were you about to say something else, Peter?
Yeah. You're really picking up on my telepathy. You're picking up telepathically. I was going to say, now, Douglas... Jennifer, on what madness has been going on in your life.
There's always something. First off, I do want everyone to know when we do get to a bit of some casual, well, I don't know if it's casual, but kind of like more of an official kind of input, either in the opening hours or in monologue, probably while Peter's with us because it is so relevant to everything we're writing about. One of the first things that I'll talk about is quakes. There's been quakes everywhere So I do want people to know that on Saturday, in case you did not know it, it's been a very busy week for seismic activity in California. And of course, people consider me to be in Northern California. That's really not the case. San Francisco, if you take a look at the map, San Francisco is equidistant. It's exactly in the center of the coast of California between north and south. But we are under the sway of Murder Incorporated, a mass murderous monopoly utilities company known as PG&E, which of course has been hitting several people I know and myself with harassment lately. We will go a little bit into that. But simultaneous to this, there have been no less than 7 earthquakes. So I do want people to know that these are all relatively minor earthquakes, but the greater San Francisco Bay Area Metroplex region has been shaken nonstop. We also know there have been an earthquake, at least one, there has been an earthquake on the East Coast. And so I will address that. I want people to understand that you need to take these quakes seriously, even if they're small quakes. If you want to know why, just look at Taiwan. Understand that Taiwan's earthquake was the worst in 25 years. Miraculously, due to the incredible investment that Japan and Taiwan have placed into their architectural renaissance, a complete dedication to restructuring their landscape in an earthquake-proof manner to absorb these shocks. The number of deaths out of 30 million people on island Taiwan, about 24 million citizens, maybe up to 27 million if you add the overseas Chinese, or rather overseas Taiwanese, who are visiting or overseas and then they return home, etc. But they're kind of circulatory in terms of they're not permanent residents. That would make it 27 million. Then you add all of the migrant labor, and that's 30 million people, and 10 people died. It's like nothing. It's like Taiwan took that in terms of lives lost like a fly swat. Nevertheless, it shows the risk to the microchips. Understand that chips are the oil of the 21st century, and this quake jolted production of the most advanced chips on Earth. And all the world's chip supply is concentrated on one tiny island. So understand, I'll get a bit into that, there was a book written many years ago by now, about in the 1980s, titled The Great Tokyo Earthquake, which was all about an economic analysis that if an earthquake hit Tokyo, the world would fall into an instant depression equal to the crash of the 1920s, 1927, I believe. And that's the same thing with Taiwan now. If something happened where that chip production got interrupted, and it was interrupted and has been impacted, but if it were truly impacted at a grander scale, the world economy collapses completely. And literally, at least in the immediate sense, at least millions of people are going to die all over the world, simply because of the cessation of chip production out of Taiwan. The entire world depends on Taiwan, a nation that the United Nations considers a deadly enemy and is sworn to destroy by its very, shall we say, its very charter. So this is the insanity of the world you live in. You all depend on a tiny island that the United Nations declares the last bastion of Hitlerism on the surface world. If that doesn't impact for you the insanity of the world you live in and why they are determined to silence me, I don't know what does. Now, I want everyone to know, of course, it was an incredible convergence of holidays. After transmission, I am actually going to be quickly returning at about, my son will probably pick me up around 10-ish in the morning. And I still might end transmission early. But basically what happened was that this convergence of holidays, and tomorrow is Buddha Day in Hawaii. We will be going into Buddha Day as this transmission continues. Hawaii will be 3 hours behind us or so. So we're going to be entering Buddha Day about the time my son picks me up in the actual state of Hawaii. I'm not going to Hawaii, but I do want people to know that, of course, I educate the Blood Boys about this. The state of Hawaii, in the year that my sister was born, declared a state holiday on the birthday of the Buddha, which they recognize as being fixed to April 8th since 1963. This, of course, is not necessarily recognized by other nations on Earth, and so it's like Easter. Buddha's birthday moves around depending on where you're at. And again, I might explain some of the intricacies of that later, but I wrote a little bit about Buddha in the summary of today's show, so don't be afraid to check that out. Other than that, of course, it was Children's Day today, so I just came home in time to read the latest revision to our 19th chapter in the book, where Peter Moon did just a incredibly commendable job, just peerless work in integrating my latest input into that chapter without a hitch. I mean, just very smoothly. He did this with barely editing what I wrote, as he said, but it all fit perfectly smoothly. And this is probably the best way to explain, in this case, the indigenous Japanese religion of Shinto to the Western world, and which I don't think anyone has ever done in a way that Westerners ever understood. And so what's going on right now with myself is, of course, due to a number of factors, some of it having to do with this convergence of holidays. I have had to invest an enormous amount of money in just expending things to set things right with, of all things, PG&E, which began a campaign of harassment against myself by basically saying that they needed to conduct a meter reading. It's all it is a fucking meter reading, which is in basically, quote unquote, like a safety inspection. And I said, I cannot conduct this with them because I'm not the landlord. So this is not my property. And so I pay my bills every month. They collect it directly out of my bank account. Yet they are insisting that somehow I'm responsible for this. I don't even use the gas, as we all know. I've explained this to them and to everyone else. And in the end, I had to expend an enormous amount of effort in getting them to contact my landlord, who, for all intents and purposes, is an absentee landlord at this point in my life and has been for quite some time now. So we finally arranged for the landlord to basically come in and kind of take them to the meters in the basement, which are near the front door of the basement, and answer the questions about the property, which I cannot do in terms of what they're speaking of. They're speaking of certain aspects of the property that need to be addressed. I am not legally representative of the property, so it would have to be my landlord to do that. Now, I had to work with this while I was working with the holidays, fulfilling my social obligations and my, for lack of a better word, professional obligations. I don't know if you call it professional when you're literally working for food. At that point, some would call that a form of slavery, yet that doesn't really do justice to the job, because my job is a pleasant job. I enjoy my job. Would rather be there than here. But because I had to take care of several things at once, I had to invest money in making certain to get from place to place, etc., etc. So I'll be asking for a lot of money throughout the month just to make certain we make rent. We're just going to assume the worst right now. I think maybe I've got $500 in the wallet, $1,000, but we're gonna obviously be spending money on supplies like water, because there's no potable water in my home as the month goes on. So we're obviously going to need more than another $1,000 in order to make rent. This is going to be a pretty intense month for fundraising again. So I do want people to understand we might as well get started now, and let everyone know we'll try and make $100 an episode. just aim for that and take it from here. Now, hopefully, the future of my life is not like this every month. We know, of course, what I'm saying is just a forlorn hope, because April, May, June, and July is when I start having lots of expenses because of having to pay $300 once a year at least for the maintenance of the website, I think, and then some other stupid obligations to pay for renewal of some other services. Some other similar expense comes up. Probably my veterans life insurance or something comes up at around the same time, June or July. So sometimes these expenses hit at once, and it'll be like $600 that I need that month or something. So hopefully May will give us a bit of a break from this, but obviously, hopefully at some point in the very near future, life changes again, and for the better, and I just kind of no longer need to be so aggressive about fundraising, or we've expanded my audience or find ways to expand the audience so that it's not such a burden on what few people view us. I mean, considering that our audience base is comparatively small, albeit respectable, it's not. It's amazing that it can support me as it does. So just that forewarning. Yeah.
It's a good time for me to segue right now, not to what I'm going to talk about tonight, but into the nature of what we're dealing with.
Yeah.
And it's like I was explaining to somebody, I don't even remember who at the moment, my business model. I said my business model that I've been working on for over 30 years successfully, publishing books, does not work with Douglas Dietrich.
Yeah. Yes.
And it's very interesting, because I'm not panicked by it, because I'm going to create a new business model.
Thank you.
In fact, I'll tell the audience that I created a new business model when I did the Montauk Project. That book sold, it was like 180 pages, and I sold it for like $15.95. I had to pick that price. It was very, very expensive for a thin little book.
Yes.
The cover was immaculate, thanks to the skilled artistry of my ex-wife.
Yeah.
And it was a new business model. People, but the information was so compelling that it worked.
Yes.
And people were glad.
Yeah.
And this will amuse you, Douglas.
Mm-hmm.
This one lady used to call from the UK, I'd like to review a copy. I'd like to review a copy of your book. And we don't send out review copies. And she always asked for a review copy of the book, and
oh god,
and she'd eventually, and back in those days it didn't cost $34 or $36, whatever it cost to send something to the UK. You could do it fairly inexpensively, like under $5.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And then she'd be asking her husband, and he goes, "It's expensive." It's expensive.
Oh god, it's incredible to see how fucking cheap people can be. But go on.
I mean, she was basically being, beleaguered by her husband. He was obviously had the financial controls in the family.
Okay.
But she would order the books or whatnot, and they had a value that was different than other books. I mean, I was aware of that, or I wouldn't have been doing what I was doing.
Right.
And I had to take responsibility for that. Otherwise, I wouldn't have any means by which to propagate what I was doing.
Yeah.
And I have the audience to thank for that.
Yes.
And it wasn't too much. I came from an environment where people might spend a couple dollars on a Dianetics book, get hooked, spend $50 on a communications course, $500 on and then the next thing, and you're dedicating your whole life to a movement.
Right.
People would buy all my books. To this day, they paid full price. It'd probably be under $400 or under $300. That's it.
Yeah.
I'm not asking them to do anything else. I'm not even asking them to buy the book. It's like it relieves one of a lot of I guess what you'd say karma.
Yeah. Yeah, I actually thought just recently that the name Muscovy strikes me a lot like the word miscarriage.
Yeah, people make fun of his name, miscreant, miscabbage, you know, McMinimum, that stuff. They make fun of his name and his height, but and of course now it's completely ridiculous where you're practically on an IV having the blood sucked out of you now.
Yes. Oh, so sad.
But this is what I was saying. The reason I'm creating a new business model here is, and it's a bit experimental because I haven't really done it yet, but I want to deliver a very quality book for a small amount of people, and also supply Douglas with some money.
Yeah.
To where it's not going to be paying him a 7% royalty, which just isn't a lot of money. On a book that even if it's an expensive book, it's still not that much money.
Right.
For an author, I couldn't survive as an author alone. I survive as a publisher, and in no small part thanks to my experience with L. Ron Hubbard.
Right.
Because he and I'll never forget, there's like little things that come through. And I remember sitting in, what was it called? The academy on the ship, the Apollo, and they'd have staff briefings there, which would be attended rather sparsely if you consider there were 300 people on the ship. Oh. And I would always attend them because you'd find out stuff, that you wouldn't know otherwise. I was very well informed to the best that I could be. And I remember his staff captain of his staff saying, he's the only author in the world, we're talking 1973, who had two publishing houses dedicated to nothing but his work.
Oh, really? Oh my God. Yeah. How could that be? How could that be that you would be the only author that did that? You must have been.
Well, there might be some Vivekananda somewhere, or somebody who had something similar. But we're talking about in the publishing world, because look, the big publishing houses do many authors. Yeah. And he had a publishing house in L.A. called Publications Organization, whatever the hell it was called. Pubs US, and Pubs DK. DK was for Denmark in Copenhagen. Ah. And they that would publish the books in Europe, and it would publish the books in the United States. They were two distinct publishing houses. I did do it's called a mission to the one in Copenhagen, and I learned a lot about the publishing business. I was there to fix their publishing business, with another gentleman from Italy, and another guy who I knew from the U.S. And it was, I was given like a crash course in what they were supposed to do, right. And of course I kind of knew better what they were supposed to do than they did in one respect. And of course that was a learning lesson. But to get back to, that was a very interesting adventure. But what I was going to say, I was explaining this to one of my friends. It's like people don't know that they shouldn't be watching Ancient Aliens.
Thank you.
And I said,
it's like friends don't let friends drive drunk. Go on.
Yeah, and I said if Jesus were to come back to come back and write a book, nobody'd want to read it. I'm not intentionally comparing Douglas to Jesus here, but you can make the comparison if you will, because there is certain key ingredients of Christianity that he has to disseminate.
Thank you.
With regards to the vampire story that most of you are familiar with. The Magi coming from a lineage of vampires or vampires who were trusted with the preservation of true Christianity as it was initially divulged to mankind, Adam's third son, Seth.
Yes, thank you.
That lineage. So this is, but the thing is, if Jesus came back and started writing, nobody want to hear it. And well, why would they want to hear it? Well, look at what they do now.
Yes.
Number one, look at what they do. It's like if somebody, and I'm sure, people might be able to relate to what I'm saying. Perhaps it ties in very good with the Book of the Law, which I'm going to be discussing in Aleister Crowley, an old occupation he used to refer to as bashing the bishop. He was referring to masturbation. Masturbation, bashing the bishop, or pounding the Pope. But if you can imagine somebody who is an incessant masturbator, and he's so compulsive that he has to go into the school bathroom or whatever, and have a wank, as they would say in the UK, have a wank. They would, and my girlfriend Marianne was so amused by that term, have a wank, when I told her about it. And she had people from the UK working at the Metropolitan Opera, and she would say it, she would use it on them, and they would get so embarrassed. She's like,
yeah.
Have a wank.
That would sound incongruent. Yes, it would sound incongruent coming from her lips.
Oh yeah, but it's like she's just having fun, and it's like it's not so funny in the UK.
Yes,
it's not so funny. You can be punished for that. And the UK people are not like that so much anymore, but there's still that residual attitude.
Yes,
they're much more humanized.
Mm-hmm.
Because the UK was so dehumanized, over the centuries.
Yes. Yeah, it was. Yeah.
You want hate? What do you want hate for? You deserve hate, an electric blanket. You deserve one. And if you say that to people from the UK, they know exactly what the hell you're talking about.
Yes.
Or
yes.
The people that I knew from yesteryear.
Mm-hmm.
It's like from the characters right out of Dickens.
That's right. Yeah, they've never really left that Victorian age or the Elizabethan age even of that kind of repression.
Yeah, it's all about being miserable.
Yes, and loving it. Yes.
Immersing themselves in it, and and this was the beautiful thing about experiencing Denmark, which I understand extends to the other Scandinavian countries, is they like it warm, and they keep their places warm, and they adore creature comforts. And I mean just common creature comforts. So like, everybody in Denmark had a home that was warm. It is a social priority.
Yes.
And not like in New York, where you've got too much rich and poor. In Denmark, everybody was kind of like, if you had a really good job, you'd be taxed 40, 60, 60% or something. And I don't know what they do now. They tax the hell out of you. If you were a doctor, you didn't make any significant money.
Right. That's
you
true.
were a doctor.
Yeah, no, it's true. There's plenty of nations like that where being a doctor is nothing. I think that's the majority of the world. Being a doctor is nothing compared to like in the United States, where of course you're not only demand respect, but your pay is astronomical. Go on.
And then if you had if a girl invited her boyfriend over, they'd go up into her bedroom and make love, and the parents downstairs would know it.
Yeah.
And they didn't care.
Right. Right.
You know,
Yeah.
I'm like, what are you doing up there? You're having pleasure, and the rest of us down here are miserable, eating porridge. This is, you know, and that stuff is, I mean, this is the way people lived, and that sort of attitude that I'm exuding there is very therapeutic for people to hear, because you can't walk around in your own life being miserable like that.
No.
And like I remember one friend I had in Scientology, and she used to tell me how her father would keep it cold, keep the house cold, because, you know, he was cheap, impoverished / cheap.
Yeah.
And it made her miserable. And
that was the intent. Yeah.
not what he wanted, but I think she's miserable to this day.
Yeah.
You know, she became sort of a fundamentalist Christian.
Oh, man.
And is pretty toxic, you know. But nevertheless, to get back to what I was saying is, if Jesus came back and, you know, was writing a book, nobody would want to read it. And part of the reason for that is he was referred to as the rejected stone, meaning the rejected capstone of the Great Pyramid. This capstone represents the finishing, polishing touch of consciousness. It's the apex of the pyramid, represented by the sign of Capricorn, because it's the goat jumping over the top of the pyramid. It's the apex of consciousness. It's the peak. What else can you say? And in literature, the Christian religion, and even some other philosophical or theological disciplines, he represents the capstone. So of course it's going to be rejected, because if it's not rejected, then you have the apex. Dare I call it the apocalypse?
Mm-hmm.
And the pyramid, when you turn it upside down, is a V shape, suggestive of the word vril, but also going downwards, forming a vertex like a vagina, giving way to the birth. That's the birth.
Mm.
That's the, call it the birth of the Christ, or the birth of the ghost descending down into the earth.
Mm.
And of course, it can be negatively connoted with, you know, the sign of the goat, Baphomet, the devil card, but that's just going down into the earth. And that's what I'm going to be talking about. But back to the rejected stone idea. So to the degree that, well, see, we're getting deeper here with my work. My work has been about this for a long time. But now it's all led me to this, and we're getting more into the nitty gritty. And those of you who've been with me and with us on this pathway, it's getting into much more core stuff that ties into the geopolitical schematic of what's going on. And therefore,
Mm-hmm.
There's an impetus to reject it by people that listen to stuff that's, oh, it's good, you know, and I don't know. There's people have a hunger for information, and so this is why a new business model is required here.
Yes.
And the other thing I've noticed, I think, and I've been in this business a long time, writing books a long time, and people, will sometimes compliment me for having intelligence or demonstrating intelligence. I like to listen to you because you sound so intelligent, and obviously they resonate with the concept of intelligence. But as I get older and move into my wiser years, where your knowledge becomes more congealed into more wisdom. Wisdom is sort of a different context than knowledge.
Yes.
I've always been wise beyond my years.
Yes.
But now it's more like, okay. And I really didn't like it in Transylvania last year when they all gave nicknames to everybody and they referred to me as Gandalf.
Why not?
Because I don't want to be Gandalf. It's I don't want to be Gandalf the White, Gandalf the Gray. It's not what I want. The guy's old. It's okay. I mean, I wasn't hurt by it. I don't know what I would have rather been chosen as. I didn't really. I was more interested in other people's names. But the thing is, as one transitions into in the female, it's the crone, I suppose. Into the male, it's sort of the elder statesman sort of role, or the vizier or whatever it is. It's like I look and I see the incredible ignorance of the population in general.
Yes.
And it's like, oh God. Like when you're younger, you're competing to be at a level of intelligence. And say, I mean, I never bit into the college game. But let's say if you're matriculating to college and you become a professor, and then you can look up and you can look all around at all the smart professors, and what a professor is basically paid to do is to research. He might teach a couple of classes and to research and write books. That's what he's paid to do, and to contribute something new to his field. A PhD professor. But, and it's a pretty lackadaisical, leisurely life. You get paid, and if you get tenure, I'm going to write a book about this. Intellectual pursuit.
It's the whole reason to get a PhD is to enter that lifestyle. Yes.
Yeah, and it can be productive, but it can also be very stagnant depending on who you are and what you do, and who's got reins on you and who's funding the university, et cetera, and what it's okay, what your peer reviews will accept and reject based upon prejudice, mental prejudices. So it has its drawbacks.
Yes.
But that sphere of, whatever that is, it's kind of limited. It's kind of limited. So when you look at it, because it's all sort of like the whole thing about peer review, it's like, well, what does everybody else think about what I'm doing?
Yeah.
What does everybody else think about what I'm doing?
Yes.
Boy, that's a double-sided coin, because some people will disregard and not care about what other people think, to the detriment that they can't relate to other people.
Yes. After all, they don't call it peer pressure or rather they do call it peer pressure for a reason. But one of the great mistakes made by people who disregard peer pressure, or at least the opinion, or how do you put it, just the kind of public kind of response to themselves, you get people who lose themselves. They claim to be artists, or they claim to be some kind of person who's purveying something. But you really do have to take into consideration what other people think, because ultimately, success really is defined by others. You can't simply.
Well, it is, but there's something called a social IQ. So
Yes.
in other words, you don't want to say, I'm not going to follow punctuation. Punctuation's stupid.
Thank you.
And then you alienate your audience that way.
Yes. Yes.
And Joe Matheny told me that I kind of like threw my audience when I did the Seventh Seal book.
Interesting.
Because he said it was such a digression. And that book did very well because I think I promoted it for a year, initially out of the gate. But it was a process, and it worked. It wasn't necessarily in keeping, but I left my audience with the Montauk Revisited when I started talking about the magic and the occult. It was more popular to the degree that it was readable. So people would read it and like it, think it's incredible, yet they didn't even understand what the OTO was I was talking about, even though I mentioned it and defined it. The OTO being the Ordo Templi Orientis of Aleister Crowley, which was one of the main themes of that book. And my interaction with it is what made it possible. And what helped make my career possible to the degree that it has been successful. Not that they were on a mission to help me. It just worked out that way.
Yeah.
And that's kind of what I'm going to be talking about tonight. But to get back to this, the rejection of the truth, the top of the pyramid, it'll be rejected. Because again, if it's not rejected, we have complete acceptance of the truth, and we have the dissolution of trauma and suffering. Therefore, solutions are going to be fought by those who want pain and suffering, which, as Douglas has taught us about the Edomites.
Yes.
The Edomites. And that, now the Edomites are not just bad guys telling Hollywood scriptwriters to write movies.
They'll do that too.
Stupid shows on TV. Put stupid shows on TV. It's sort of a assault on consciousness.
Yes.
Something that L. Ron Hubbard was very hip to.
Yes.
And he saw how bad and corrupt the world was. And in the tradition of George W. Bush, he says, I'm not going to play that bullshit game. And, so he went about doing what he did, creating a therapy, but also not taking it on the chin and taking full advantage of it to the point where he, created his own empire. But that's another story, although it's not completely divorced from what I'm going to talk about tonight. So this is why there is a resistance, and this is what I want to do about it in the future. And I'm making good progress on the book. Maybe I'll go into a little bit of that tonight, once I get past the theme of tonight, which is the eclipse and the anniversary of the Book of the Law. But anyway, so I sort of like inserted myself there because I felt it was appropriate. If you want to continue with your diatribe of what's going on, I'll back up.
Oh, thank you so much. No, that's very considerate of you, very gracious, and I mean that sincerely.
I was trying to contextualize why there's so much resistance against you.
Yes, definitely. Definitely. No, I'm serious. I say that without sarcasm. It's very gracious of Peter to do that, because sometimes it's hard to keep track of our thoughts once we allow someone else to recontinue their own train of thoughts. Then it's hard to recapture our game, so to speak. But Peter's used to that. He plays football. He's able to adapt on the field to the moment. So, yeah, I do want people to understand everything that Peter says is profoundly appreciated and relevant. And he does need to create a new business model because of a very different situation than any that he's ever faced. And he's expressed it, and will continue to re-express that, because it takes a lot of redefinition for our listeners as well as for the world. The one thing that it does bring to mind before I get into the immediacy of my own situation is that I do want people to understand that I've been forced to confront by a lot of developments recently, and the overwhelming majority of them seem to be positive. I mean, obviously, there's the holidays. There was working at the estate. There were other things in terms of social obligations with even my Asian connections, because of my obligations to them as well. All of this is pleasant. All of this is positive. But the synchronicity, it does not seem to be any accident whatsoever that PG&E was conducting its harassment campaign at this time. It made no sense. There's no logic to it. But then that's the way with so much else that goes on in my life. And but a number of people I was speaking to were bringing up and just talking about observing the situation of my suppression by the system, by media, and just the enormous campaign to assassinate my character, which is simply relentless and has been ongoing forever. And the sheer chronic relentlessness of the people that they send to basically infiltrate us as a community. Particularly, of course, what would be considered by the enemy to be the inner circle, meaning just people who actually come on this call and help with Team Dietrich, basically so that I can have opportunities to refresh myself. What Peter Moon said bluntly are T&P breaks, or just to kind of act as a roundtable participant. And overwhelmingly, these people are inimical. They're just inimically hostile. They are simply the enemy. And there is no other term that does justice. And if they're not the enemy, they're as good as the enemy. Just in terms of, as Christ had said, be thee either hot or cold, but if thou art lukewarm, I will spit thee out. And this has to do with phlegmatic personalities. By that, people like Mark H., who just were sitting in and doing nothing, essentially trying to cop out and say, oh, I don't want to be implicated, or I wasn't listening when I asked for his backup, when one of these infiltrators has a psychotic break. In that case, of course, Trappist Nicholson, who referred to himself as Acid Kick 96 / Sid, SYD. This individual has a psychotic break on my program, and then when he says I said something that I did not say, like minutes or moments beforehand, and I turned towards Mark H. and did I say that? Oh, I wasn't listening. I mean, really, I wasn't. What are you doing here? Why are you on the call? He's on the call. He's on the round table, and literally says I'm not listening. Why are you here? It's the insanity speaks for itself, but the surrealism, the absurdity. Someone like a person I gave leeway to forever, someone like Brandon Young, who just comes on my show to lie, pathologically lie in that maniacally monotone voice of his, where he'll just unable to control himself in a very real sense, but obviously with an agenda, comes onto my show to promote Michael Aquino and Lilith and the Temple of Set, and say they're people just like you and me. And when I tactfully ask him about that the next episode, saying he didn't say that, calling me a liar on my own program, even though what he said is on record. The insanity of these people. But these are just examples of the infiltrators. These are infiltrators. These are people who, when it comes to someone like Mark H., you can't even say that's lukewarm. There's no way anyone can volunteer their time to come on a call like we're on right now and then say, oh, I wasn't listening. It's like, why are you on the call? What are you doing while you're here? Cruising for internet porn on the side and jacking off? Your attention is that time. What would you be doing that would distract you from a call that you're actually participating in, like the one you're on? And so it's like there's no other point to come on other than to listen and participate, or there's no other point to be here. Obviously, there's the certain logic that speaks for itself in that regard. But it all comes down to this. When you take a look at the incredible intensity of the attack on my character, whether it's by trying to destroy my reputation by sending the Three Stooges, as was on that program where I ultimately had to purge them all, this was something, of course, that is simply symptomatic of what's been going on forever. And to go down through a litany of that would be redundant. Yet, nevertheless, we do have to do this to remind new listeners, or the listeners who have been here, exactly what the context is. Because there are people who are not on the call, who are just tuning in. And they'll tune in and tune out, and tune in and tune out. They tune in longer than they would on most programs because we see it in the analytics. The analytics will say the average viewing time is something close to 50 minutes, which means that people are listening for almost an hour, which is longer than they would tune in to anything else on Earth. Because if they're tuning into anything else on Earth, they barely give it their attention. This is the age of the soundbite, where you're dumbed down by TikTok, after all. Amy Como is among us, so kisses to Amy Como. Remember, honey.
Hello, Amy.
Yes, Peter says hello as well. Don't forget to use your monkey wrench. It's a firearm. Use it to shoot to kill whenever there's anybody in the chat who's misbehaving. And I notice this is the first episode we've had in a while in which Trappist Nicholson has not showed up. So all that is, that's a positive in and of itself, because we did so much to kill his attempt in the last comment that he entered on my latest episode before tonight's transmission. His last comment that was entered, I think the episode before tonight's transmission, the episode preceding the latest episode before tonight, was when he left a comment that we dissected and deconstructed at length. And when we did that, it devastated him enough to apparently leave us alone, hopefully forever. But that individual, of course, was becoming relentless. He always was, of course. It was his assignment. And we know that he was in contact with the Temple of Set and with the Cult of the Kings of Edom. We knew this from several statements he himself made, and we've gone into them at length, and we can go into them again in the future for no other reason than for morbid entertainment, because he does at least provide that. But one of the things he was emphasizing this time was his openly his connection with the Temple of Set, which, of course, if anyone doesn't believe what Brendan Zogit and I were bringing up along with Aristides in that last episode, we have all the screenshots. So we were all referencing actual screenshots, which could be borne as evidence in a court of law if it ever came to that. I also asked you privately, our dear Brendan Zogit, to basically investigate ways to counter-harass Trappist Nicholson by basically calling his parole officers, or the equivalent thereof, to say that the charges for his assaulting his landlady were dropped only because of his promise in court to enter into rehabilitation, which of course he's not rehabilitating. He's using every drug under the sun, along with continuing to drink alcohol. So I said that to Brendan Zoget privately, and yet it's interesting that after I asked him to contact the authorities about Trappist Nicholson did not show up for this episode. So they are listening to everything we say, and I'm talking about whether we're on this program or whether we're off the program, whether we're on stream or off stream. They do listen to everything I say. But when some people were bringing up to me the endless character assassination, it really comes down to this. You take a look at, say, for instance, this, how would I say it? Some bumfuck program. It's like, you would not even find it if you were looking around on the internet, just casually looking for alternative information. You would never run across this program. I do not even consciously remember its name. But it was presented to me by people who were just casually looking up my name on the internet and found, you know, if you scroll down long enough, you run across like little chicken shit channels where it's kind of like they have like old episodes of the Opperman Report from Spreaker and the like. And some of these will have like little synopses under them that are a few sentences. But for the one where they were interviewing the multi-millionaire who wanted me to have sex with him and offered me $1 million to do so, and I refused, Stephen Outram, they had this long essay that was literally pages and pages of a summary in which he's attacking everything about me, including my, I guess you'd call it my resume on LinkedIn, which, by the way, the only mistake on the LinkedIn resume is that it doesn't include my time in ROTC, the Reserve Officers Training Corps at the University of San Francisco, which again, the convoluted nature of my life would not make sense to any average individual. I've explained it at length repeatedly. How did you get into ROTC and not become an officer in the Marine Corps? It was after my dishonorable discharge from the Marine Corps, I participated in ROTC in the University of San Francisco because they would not, you know, they had no rules to stop you from doing that. And aside from that, it was something that enabled me to put that on my resume that I attended ROTC at the University of San Francisco, which is a Jesuit university. And the prefix to their phone number is 666, which is either a believe it or not or something that you would expect anyway. But at any rate, that was where I also worked security with their police department. And they have an actual police department that patrols their grounds, their university police. They're not just students who are working on campus. I was an exception to that rule because I was on kind of like an internship. And though that all together went into my mercenary resume and my security resume as a plus, that I had attended Reserve Officer Training Corps, and that was how I was able to participate as an officer in combat on mercenary and security contracts, which I did not do in the military. So how's that for juicing the system or exploiting the system? I could do that because, of course, I know how, because I had been a military bureaucrat for the Department of Defense. And such being said, he was attacking everything. He didn't even know about that, so he didn't attack that, but he was attacking everything else. And this excruciating attempt to pervert every detail. And, of course, everything that he was attacking I could easily counter. And, of course, would do so if I were given a public forum in which to do so. But, of course, no public forum is provided. The attacks are out there with no one who interviewed him ever called me for a counter interview. Instead, they just interview him and then put that up for display. One of the things that stands out is, of course, the bizarre nature of how it's not really on a major platform that he attacks from. But then again, he can't, because that would provide me all the advertising he doesn't need. So instead, they do this on minor platforms where the bottom feeders of the internet will find it, because basically at the level where I'm at, I was for a long time at the level where only the bottom feeders would be aware of me. Now, of course, I was on the Coast to Coast AM for a period of time, and that was like at the top of the apex of alternative information. But all of that had to do with the fact that they thought I was an active Satanist, and I honestly on their side. As a matter of fact, the insanity of their position, which is viewed in, can be viewed for people who are interested, with this little weird Spreaker outfit that had the attack from Stephen Outram. The insanity of the position is that he claims, I am a Satanist who is fighting the true good guys who are on the side of the angels, who are the Temple of Set. Which is why they sent their agent Brandon Young over here to talk about how Michael Aquino and Lilith were really people just like us. He is on their side. He advocates for them. And if you ever hear that sick son of a bitch and his ramblings on my show from past episodes, you understand the level at how they process and how they mentate, which is not at all. It's totally incoherent and surrealistic. So when it comes to this kind of attack, every aspect of my character, the energy that's put into it, with infiltration, with this kind of bottom feeder approach to make certain that anyone who's seeking alternative information in the most alternative source points sees these attacks. All of this energy, think of the money involved, the time involved, the emotional investment of these people, and you understand it's a network, which anyone who's been following us for more than a little bit of time can see this as inescapable. This is a network of people that is not at all minor or small. They recruit actively and constantly. So what is the entire effort put behind this? What would justify or rationalize any of it? It all comes down to one thing: because of who I am. It's not even what I say. It's really just who I am. It really comes down to the fact that I'm the son of Adolf Hitler. Otherwise, when you see it and you look at it and you say, God damn, they're deconstructing or attempting to deconstruct every aspect of this man's life. They're attacking his time in school. They're attacking where he lived, where he was born, who his parents were. I mean, it just goes on endlessly. Whatever his parents accomplished, they attack that, claiming my legal father wasn't in the Navy, or that he wasn't on these ships that I've said he was on. It's a terror. The amount of effort into this level of insanity is justified only by the fact that I am the son of Adolf Hitler. It all comes down to this. And they use this term, known liar. This comes up again and again. Known liar. Because, of course, by claiming something like that, it's a pre-identifier and it prejudges people. This is where you get the term prejudice. Prejudice comes from the term prejudgment. This is their attempts to cast a spell. This is what words do. Words have enormous power, and words cast spells. That's why spell books are called grimoires, or grammars. So, the one thing that I know is that the overwhelming amount of people who try to come on my show are the enemy. This includes, of course, Dr. Daryl Hamamoto, all the rest. It's like people who begin to attack me or ambush me on my own program. And it's just relentless. It just never stops. So the end result, of course, is that it's simply miraculous that I have the unkillable core that I do around me. And with that in mind, the one thing I could tell you of more immediate impact tonight on a personal level is that over the past several days, because of the holidays, I've not only through social obligations, as well as obviously with teaching the blood boys at the estate, I do get my fair share of blood. The biggest problem is that when I see my Asian acquaintances, basically my gang members, members of the Tong or the Asian underworld that I've communed with throughout my life. The people who protected me when I was young, I, of course, wind up partaking in the festivities and eating solid food. And the solid food, really, at times, I honestly think to myself, I've got to stop eating, period. Just got to stop eating solid food. Of course, if I had regular access to blood or were willing to simply go out and kill various people and take it, which would be pointless on my part because I really can't drain a person dry, being only a quarter vampire, being a damnfire. I cannot consume the amount of blood my mother could. Being half vampire, she could drain a man dry and her belly would swell like a camel hump and she would look like she was in second or third trimester pregnancy, and that would keep her for a good 1 or 2 weeks, sometimes up to 2 weeks without eating anything. Just drinking water for hydration. With that, she was able to live her life as a huntress and actually, hunt as she wanted me to hunt. Our dear Victoria, Lauren Hobbs, shout out to her. She says she's headed back from Mexico a week early in the air. Oh, goddess bless you, honey. I pray that you're safe. And so I hope all is well with you, darling. And so that being said, let me give her this. And so with all that, she's headed back, so she must have survived, which is what we were hoping for. And hopefully she enjoyed the eclipse, of course, and had a chance to basically see it without anything too negative happening, but something must have happened for her to be coming home early. We'll find out more per her own judgment when she decides to come on and share with us. So all that being said, the point is that the solid food is not really processed by my body. Supplements are much easier processed. They have much more benefit for me. Every time before these transmissions, I try to make certain to take a lot of supplements. I have a regimen that I do prior to the program most of the time that I will take a bunch of supplements, and that, of course, is what my body